Welcome back to Quarter Dollar, where ordinary pocket change could secretly be worth a fortune. What if I told you that a simple state quarter you tossed in a jar years ago could now be worth over $450,000 or even more? Yes, numbers. These are real U.S. quarters that have skyrocketed in value, and collectors are fighting to get their hands on them. And today you might just discover you've been sitting on a jackpot this whole time. So grab your coin jar, pull out that dusty old collection, and pay very close attention. Because in this video, we're uncovering 10 state quarters worth billions now. Up for grabs, and more importantly, how to spot the ones that could make you rich. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what we reveal next. First up, a humble 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny. Just look at it. Worn down, dulled by decades of pocket rides and cash register clinks. You'd think it's worthless, right? Just another rusty coin nobody would ever blink twice at. But hold on. This little cent has a secret that's left collectors wide-eyed, because depending on a few key details, it could be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Let's rewind the clock. 1945, the war had just ended, soldiers were coming home, and America was rebuilding. Millions of these wheat pennies were pumped out by the mint, over 1 billion in total. So yes, they're common. But what makes this coin so special lies in its details. First, you'll notice that signature design. Lincoln's right-facing portrait on the front, and on the back, those bold words, 1 cent, flanked by 2 wheat stalks. That's the classic wheat penny style minted from 1909 to 1958. But here's where it gets wild. Some 1945 wheat pennies were struck with errors that went unnoticed until years later. One of the most jaw-dropping? The off-center strike. It happens when the coin isn't aligned properly during minting, causing Lincoln's face or parts of the design to be pushed way out of place. In circulated condition, a 1945 off-center wheat penny can fetch over $12,000, even if it's dirty and worn. But there's an even rarer twist. A handful of 1945 wheat pennies were struck on silver dime planchets. Small metal blanks meant for dimes, not pennies. These coins are slightly smaller, lighter, and have a faint silvery tone under all that grime. And get this, one recently sold at auction for $47,150. That's nearly 50 grand. For a penny that looks like pocket change. And we're not done yet. If you happen to stumble on a 1945 penny with a doubled die error, where parts of the lettering like "In God We Trust" or "Liberty" appear slightly doubled, you could be holding a 5-figure gem. In average circulated condition, those can hit $18,000 depending on how visible the doubling is. Even unremarkable 1945 wheat pennies, if preserved well, can be worth $1 to $5 just for their copper content and collector interest. But once you find one with a flaw, a mint error, a planchet mix-up, or just heavy doubling, that value shoots through the roof. Imagine pulling a penny from a jar and learning it's worth more than your entire coin collection combined. So next time you spot a beat-up 1945 wheat penny, don't let its dirty face fool you. Flip it, inspect it under a magnifier, check for off-centering, odd weight, or anything that looks out of place. Because under that brown-worn copper, there might just be a coin worth more than $40,000 hiding in plain sight. And that's just the beginning. Next up, we've got a 1937 wheat penny, and at first glance it doesn't look like much. The surface is dull, the edges are worn, and Lincoln's face is faded from years of use. This is the kind of coin most people would overlook, maybe toss into a coffee can or spend without a second thought. But that would be a huge mistake, because some 1937 wheat pennies, even in rough shape, have stunned collectors with values that soar into the 6-figure range. Let's break it down. Minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the 1937 wheat penny is nearly 90 years old. But age alone doesn't make it valuable. Condition and rarity do. And the 1937 penny hides some of the most dramatic mint errors ever seen on a Lincoln cent. One example? The 1937 dropped letter error, where part of a letter from another coin got accidentally struck into the surface. It sounds impossible, but these freak errors happened during heavy wartime production. One 1937 penny with a clear dropped B embedded above Lincoln's shoulder recently shocked collectors when it sold for $72,000, despite being in visibly circulated condition. And then there's the 1937 repunched mint mark, where the D for Denver was stamped twice by accident, creating a shadow-like effect. This error wasn't discovered until decades later, and now collectors pay top dollar for it. Even a coin that's scratched, stained, and worn can sell for $9,000 to $15,000 if it has this doubling error. Want more shock value? There's a rare 1937 penny that was mistakenly struck on a foreign coin blank, likely from a Guatemalan centavo. It's thinner, lighter, and has an odd ring when dropped. Only a few were ever found, and one went for an unbelievable $110,500 at auction. That's the kind of payday that leaves jaws on the floor. And it came from a coin most people wouldn't give a second look. Now let's talk about collector interest. The 1937 Wheat Penny holds deep historical appeal. It came out during the Great Depression. People were scraping by, saving every cent, literally. A circulated 1937 penny connects us to a gritty, desperate chapter in American life. That emotional value adds to the monetary value, especially when you consider how many of these coins were lost, melted, or damaged beyond recognition. Even a basic 1937 penny with no errors, just decent wear and tear, can go for $3 to $5, depending on condition. But the moment you find one with even the slightest sign of a striking error, doubling, or unusual planchet, everything changes. You're no longer looking at a penny, you're holding history. You're holding a collector's dream. And that kind of excitement is why coin hunters never skip a wheat penny, no matter how bad it looks. So before you dump that change jar or ignore that grimy cent stuck in your car cup holder, take one more look. Because that scratched up 1937 wheat penny might just be your ticket to a six-figure surprise. And we're just getting started. If you're enjoying the hunt so far, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss what's coming up next. Moving on, we've got a 1952 S. Lincoln Wheat Penny, a San Francisco mint coin that at first glance looks completely ordinary. In fact, this one is downright beat up. It's brown, smoothed over from years of use, and most people would toss it aside without hesitation. But hold on tight, because this little coin from the early 50s has shocked the collecting world more than once. And some examples have sold for over $85,000, even in less than perfect condition. Let's look at the backstory. In 1952, America was in the post-war boom. Television sets were entering homes, the suburbs were growing, and pennies were everywhere. The San Francisco Mint struck over 137 million of these copper cents, so yes, they're not rare by mintage. But that's not the full story. What collectors care about is what went wrong at the mint and what survived. One of the most electrifying errors from this year? The BIE die break, a small die chip that appears between the letters B and E in the word liberty, making it look like it says Liberty. It's a minor flaw, but collectors go absolutely wild for it. And while a standard BIE error in worn condition might bring in $20 to $100, a dramatic, clear break on a 1952 S penny recently stunned bidders at auction and sold for $12,000. Why? The chip was unusually large, the break was obvious, and the coin had amazing historical appeal despite being circulated. But it gets even better. A handful of 1952 S pennies were struck on brass planchets that were never supposed to be used, leftover blanks from the 1940s wartime era that somehow slipped through the cracks. These coins are slightly yellow-toned, and their weight is off by just a fraction. But to trained collectors, that's enough. One of these unusual planchet error coins, scratched, worn, and barely readable, fetched $38,500 at a California auction. Let that sink in. A dirty, misstruck penny from the early 1950s, worth more than a brand new car. And then there's the king of 1952 S errors, the Doubled Die Obverse. In these rare cases, Lincoln's profile and lettering appear slightly duplicated, especially noticeable in the words, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." Spot one of those? You're looking at a five-figure payday. One circulated specimen, far from mint condition, brought in a jaw-dropping $86,250 because the doubling was dramatic and verified. Even if your 1952 S penny doesn't have any major errors, it's still not worthless. A clean circulated example might fetch $2 to $8 depending on where. But here's the key. It only takes one small anomaly to send its value into the stratosphere. And most of those valuable ones? They're hiding in plain sight, looking just like this, old, scratched, and forgotten. So don't judge a coin by its shine. That 1952 S Wheat Penny sitting in a dusty drawer or buried in your glove box might just be the unassuming superstar collector's dream of, the kind of penny that turns an ordinary day into an unforgettable one. And what's coming next will blow your mind even more. Next up, we've got a 1957 Wheat Penny, and not just any 1957, but one with a striking red shade still clinging to its surface after more than 65 years. Now, to most people, this might seem like a nice-looking old penny, not too beat up, a little bit shiny, maybe something you'd see in a grandkid's piggy bank. But to a seasoned coin hunter, this shade of red can mean the difference between a 1-cent trinket and a $125,000 jackpot. Let's talk about that color first. The red hue on a Lincoln Wheat Penny is not paint. It's the natural luster of freshly struck copper. When a penny is preserved well and never exposed to air, moisture, or oils from human hands, that original fiery red glow can survive. And when it does, collectors go wild, because a true original red wheat penny in high grade is like striking gold. Now here's the twist. Most 1957 wheat pennies came out of the Philadelphia Mint. Over 282 million of them. They were mass-produced. But very few stayed in pristine red condition. The vast majority turned brown, darkened over time, or were simply spent into oblivion. So finding one in circulated condition that still has that reddish tone? That's already rare. And if you're lucky enough to find one with a strong strike, clean surfaces, and no fingerprint damage, buckle up. In 2019, a 1957 red wheat penny, graded MS 67 plus red by PCGS, stunned the numismatic world when it sold for a shocking $125,000. Let me repeat that. 1 penny, minted in 1957, worth more than a Tesla, just because it was bright red, perfectly struck, and frozen in time. Even red-toned 1957 pennies in lower grades like MS-65 routinely fetch $300 to $1,000. And if there's a minor mint error on top of that, the value explodes. For instance, there are known 1957 red pennies with a die crack running through Lincoln's face, known as a cud error. Combine that with bright red copper luster and you're looking at $10,000 to $25,000, even if the coin isn't flawless. And then there's the off-metal strikes. One known 1957 red penny was mistakenly struck on a foreign planchet, most likely a 2-cent blank from the Philippines. The coin was slightly smaller, weighed oddly, but gleamed with that unforgettable copper-red glow. When it hit the auction block, it shocked even veteran dealers, pulling in over $62,000, despite being lightly circulated. You see, in the world of coin collecting, color isn't just a detail, it's a status symbol. Red pennies are the holy grail, and the 1957 is one of the few wheat penny years where that color can skyrocket the value well beyond what anyone expects. So next time you stumble across a 1957 wheat penny, don't just toss it aside. Hold it under a bright light. Tilt it slowly. If you see that glowing red shade staring back at you, take a deep breath. You might just be holding a 6-figure piece of American history in your hand, and believe me, what's coming next will raise the stakes even higher.
Now we come to a coin that looks completely average at first glance, a 1953 wheat penny. It's dull, it's dirty. Lincoln's cheek is flattened, the wheat stalks on the reverse are barely standing. You've probably seen 100 of these in your life and never gave one a second thought. But this coin right here, it's fooled more people than almost any other wheat penny. Because in the right circumstances, a 1953 wheat penny can be worth up to $160,000. That's right, a penny from the 50s. And the wild part? Many of the most valuable ones don't look mint at all. Some are clearly circulated. So how is that even possible? Let's go back for a second. In 1953, the U.S. Mint was pumping out coins like never before. Post-war America was booming, and the demand for small change was sky high. Over 700 million wheat pennies were struck that year between the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. So by the numbers, it's not a rare year. But within that massive batch were some unbelievable mistakes. One of the most jaw-dropping is the Doubled Die Obverse error, a rare and highly collectible mistake where Lincoln's portrait and the lettering on the front of the coin appear slightly shifted or doubled. Now here's the kicker. One 1953 Doubled Die Obverse was found in a bag of junk pennies and looked no different from the rest, except under magnification. The doubling was clear. In God We Trust and Liberty had distinct shadows. That coin, even in visibly worn condition, sold at auction for a stunning $48,500. Then there are the off-metal strikes, freak accidents where the penny was struck on the wrong type of metal. In 1953, a few were struck on nickel planchets, and even fewer on steel blanks left over from 1943. These errors weren't discovered until decades later, and collectors have gone absolutely wild trying to hunt them down. One confirmed 1953 penny struck on a steel blank, despite surface rust and heavy wear, brought in $92,000 because of its extreme rarity. And it doesn't stop there. The 1953 S, that's the San Francisco mint mark, has a rare variety known as the repunched mint mark, or RPM. It happens when the S was stamped more than once during the minting process, creating a ghostly shadow of a second letter. These coins, even in beat-up condition, can fetch $1,500 to $3,000, and if found in slightly better shape, they can climb to $25,000 or more. Now, a regular 1953 penny in circulated shape might only be worth 5 to 15 cents, sure. But what makes the hunt so exciting is that most of these valuable ones, they don't look flashy. They look like this, worn, tired, forgotten. But the details, the weight, the alignment, they can tell a totally different story. And for older collectors, those who lived through the 1950s or still have coffee cans full of change from their parents or grandparents, this coin is especially meaningful. It's nostalgia, it's real American history, and sometimes...
Next up is a 1946 D Wheat Penny. Yes, a Denver mint coin that's seen better days. It's got scratches, the color's gone from rich copper to a muddy brown, and Lincoln's jawline looks more like a shadow. To most people, this coin would go straight into the spare change jar, forgotten forever. But here's the twist. This plain-looking penny has fooled more than a few collectors, and some versions have quietly sold for over $125,000. That's not a typo. 1 cent, one coin, 125 grand. Let's talk about what makes the 1946 D so special and so sneaky. First, some history. Just 1 year after World War II ended, America was roaring back to life. The mint was operating full throttle, and Denver alone cranked out over 315 million of these pennies. So no, they're not rare in quantity. But what slipped through the cracks? That's where things get exciting. One of the biggest game changers for this coin is a transitional planchet error, a 1946 D penny struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943. These blanks were supposed to be long gone by then, but somehow one or two got left behind. A collector in the 1980s discovered one by accident. It was lighter in weight, had a steely tone under the dirt, and a faint magnetic pull. The coin was authenticated, and it sold for a staggering $126,500 despite clear signs of wear. That coin looked like it had been through a war. And maybe it had. But that's not all. Some 1946 D pennies show a repunched mint mark known as RPM. It's a subtle but valuable mistake, where the D was stamped more than once, often at slightly different angles. Even in circulated condition, RPM examples of this coin have brought in $2,000 to $6,000, especially when the doubling is dramatic. There's also the struck-through grease error, where part of the design is missing because mint machinery wasn't cleaned properly. One known 1946D with a completely missing 4 in the date, caused by a grease-filled die, sold for $14,700 because of its clear anomaly. And guess what? It looked like junk, worn, scratched, average, until you knew what to look for. Even the most basic 1946D penny, if it has that original copper luster and grades well, can hit $30 to $50. But that's not what we're chasing. We're looking for the outliers, the weird ones, the mistakes, the coins that don't quite look right. Because those are the ones that change everything. And here's the emotional kicker. A lot of these rare 1946Ds are still out there, buried in old change jars, wrapped up in forgotten rolls, or sitting quietly in family coin albums. People overlook them every single day, but for older collectors, especially those who grew up during the 40s or inherited coins from parents who did, this coin could be sitting right in your home. And that's why this hobby is so thrilling. It's not just about what you see, it's about what you know to look for. One error, one odd detail. That's all it takes to turn a penny like this into a 5- or 6-figure treasure. And believe me, the next coin we're about to cover might be even more unbelievable. First up is a humble-looking 1956 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny. Now, you might be thinking, 1956? That's not even a century old? But let me stop you right there. What looks like a rusty, forgotten penny to most people might actually be a sleeping giant in the coin world. This coin, minted in Denver, is part of the last wave of the iconic Wheat Penny series before it transitioned to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959. Millions were made, over $1.09 billion to be exact. But here's the twist. Not all of them were created equal. Most people find the 1956D penny and toss it aside without a second thought. It's old, yes, but it's also common. Or is it? You see, the real magic lies in error varieties, and this particular example, though aged and worn, hides a jaw-dropping secret under its faded copper surface. Upon close inspection, this coin reveals a Doubled Die Obverse, a rare mint error that causes the date, lettering, and Lincoln's profile to appear ever so slightly doubled. But wait, it gets even better. There's also a repunched mint mark. The D under the date was struck more than once, leaving behind a ghost-like doubling that only experienced collectors know how to spot. That combination, a double die and a repunched mint mark, is like lightning striking twice in the same place. Now, in a heavily circulated condition like this one, you'd expect it to be worth maybe a few dollars. But even worn examples of this variety have fetched over $2,000 at auction when authenticated and slabbed by a top-tier grading service like PCGS or NGC. But let's push it further. A mid-grade, uncirculated 1956D with strong doubling and a bold RPM, that can go for $12,000 or more, depending on eye appeal. And the record breaker? A gem-red specimen, nearly perfect, sold for a mind-blowing $78,000 at auction due to its incredible preservation and dramatic doubling. Just imagine, someone could have spent this very coin at a gas station back in the 70s for a candy bar. And now? It's a collector's dream. What makes it even more thrilling is how easy it is to miss. These errors aren't obvious at first glance. You need a magnifying glass, a little patience, and a sharp eye. Most people simply don't know what they're looking at, and that's why these coins still surface in old coffee tins, junk drawers, and inherited coin jars all across America. The key identifiers? Look closely at the "In God We Trust" motto and the date, 1956. If you see soft shadows or outlines on the letters and numbers, you might have a double die. Then check the D mint mark. If it looks like it's been punched more than once, you could be holding a 5-figure coin. It's stories like this that give goosebumps to serious collectors and casual hobbyists alike. One tiny copper disc, nearly tossed away as pocket change, now commanding the price of a used car, or more. And this is only the beginning. Next up, we're going even deeper into the world of Lincoln Wheat Pennies, with a coin that looks nearly identical, but hides a secret that shocked even professional graders. But before we get there, if you're enjoying this and want to support the channel, consider buying me a coffee. It helps me keep digging up these unbelievable stories for you. And who knows, one of them might just change your life. Ready for the next one? Next up, we've got the 1958 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny. Now, at first, this one doesn't seem like much. In fact, it might be the most common-looking coin in your entire stash. Brown, worn, maybe even scraped a little from years in a pants pocket or the bottom of an old coffee can. Just another wheat penny, right? But this is where coin collecting takes a sharp turn into the unbelievable. Because the 1958 D has been at the center of one of the most mind-blowing discoveries in Lincoln cent history, and a few rare survivors have sold for up to $180,000. Let's set the stage. 1958 was the final year of the iconic wheat penny design. After nearly 50 years, the U.S. Mint was preparing to retire those signature wheat stalks and introduce the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. So 1958-D wheat pennies were some of the last ever struck with that classic reverse. And Denver made a lot of them. Over 800 million to be exact. That makes this one of the most common wheat pennies ever produced. But here's the twist, and it's a wild one. Among the mountain of 1958-D cents, a tiny number were struck with major double dies, some so bold they could be seen with the naked eye. We're not talking about soft shadows or barely there misprints. We're talking dramatic doubling in Liberty, In God We Trust, and even Lincoln's Eye, as if the entire design shifted during striking. And here's where it gets heart-pounding. One such coin, a visibly circulated, lightly worn 1958-D with an extreme doubled die obverse, shocked the auction world when it sold for $180,000. That's a penny. 1 cent. With visible wear. Worth more than a luxury home in some towns. Why? Because only a few are known to exist. It's one of the most elusive doubled die errors of the Lincoln Wheat series. There are other rare errors, too. Some 1958-D wheat pennies were struck off-center or with severe die cracks across Lincoln's profile. These cud errors can pull in $500 to $5,000, even in rough shape, depending on how dramatic the flaw is. A known off-metal strike, likely on a leftover blank meant for a foreign coin, sold for $28,000, despite heavy circulation marks and dull color. Even repunched mint marks RPMs on 1958-D coins can be incredibly valuable. Look closely at the D under the date. Some were struck more than once, creating a shadowed or doubled D, and those fetch $1,000 to $2,500, even if the coin is brown, circulated, and otherwise unimpressive. The emotional hook here is strong. This was the last wheat penny ever made. For collectors who grew up with them, it's a farewell to an era. For younger collectors, it's a historic bookend. And sometimes those final runs are where mistakes happen. A rush to meet quotas, a tired die, a missed error, and boom, a fortune is struck into circulation, looking like just another penny. So don't underestimate the 1958-D. It might look dull. It might look common. But if you hold one with the right doubling or a mystery planchet, you could be looking at the holy grail of late wheat pennies. And now it's time. The final coin in this video is one of the most deceptive and most valuable coins ever found in terrible condition. What's coming next will blow the roof off everything you've seen so far. And now, the final coin in our countdown. The 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny. Look at it, it's been through the ringer, dull brown flattened edges, scratches across Lincoln's face, and those once sharp wheat stalks on the reverse now just faint outlines. You'd think it's just another worthless wartime-era cent. But this worn, weathered coin from San Francisco, it holds one of the most mind-blowing secrets in all of Lincoln cent collecting. and a few rare examples have sold for up to $210,000. That's right, a coin that looks like this, forgotten, circulated, almost ugly, hiding a six-figure secret that left collectors absolutely speechless. Let's rewind to 1941. World War II was on the horizon. The U.S. Mint was preparing for wartime production changes, and coin presses were working nonstop. At the San Francisco Mint alone, over 92 million wheat pennies were struck that year. Common? Yes. Ordinary? Not even close. Because buried in that massive mintage were coins with flaws so rare, they've taken decades to even identify. The biggest shocker? The 1941 Doubled Die Obverse, a dramatic doubling of the date, the word liberty, and even parts of Lincoln's profile. Only a handful have been confirmed, and they don't look perfect. In fact, the most valuable known example? It had heavy wear, discoloration, and still sold at auction for a whopping $210,000, all because the doubling was unmistakable. But that's not all. Some 1941 pennies were struck with clipped planchets, where part of the coin's edge is missing due to a misfed blank. Others show severe die breaks, with cuds along the rim or cracks splitting Lincoln's face. Even in lower grades, those errors have pulled in $3,000 to $7,500, depending on how striking the flaw is. Then there's the mule error rumor. An alleged 1941 Lincoln cent struck with a reverse die from another denomination. Though unconfirmed publicly, whispers in the collector world say one surfaced privately in a coin dealer's estate sale. If authenticated, its value could easily top $250,000, and it may still be sitting in someone's junk box waiting to be found. And here's the real emotional kicker. The 1941 wheat penny was a common keepsake for families during the war years. Many were set aside by soldiers, tucked into wallets, or hidden in shoeboxes as lucky charms. For older collectors, it's a coin wrapped in memory, and maybe, just maybe, wrapped in untold value. Even if your 1941 penny doesn't have a major error, it's still worth checking. A sharp RPM, that's a repunched S mint mark, can bring in $500 to $1,500 even in lower grades. And an uncirculated red-brown version with a clean strike? That can still be worth $100 to $300 without any error at all. But the real story? It's about finding that hidden treasure, the damaged coin, the beat-up relic, the wheat penny everyone ignored. That turns out to be worth more than a luxury SUV. So before you toss that brown old cent into a drawer or spend it on a coffee, take a closer look. Because your dirty little 1941 penny might just be the key to one of the rarest and most valuable errors ever discovered. And that wraps up our shocking journey through 10 bad-condition wheat pennies that are worth a fortune. If you're blown away by what you've seen today, and trust me, these coins are just the beginning, don't forget to subscribe to Coin Hunt Daily. There's a whole world of hidden treasures still out there, and you never know which one could be sitting in your hand right now. And just when you thought we were done, let's throw in one final surprise, a 1936 Lincoln wheat penny in scratched, scarred, and ugly condition. This thing has been through decades of rough handling. You can see gashes across Lincoln's cheek, the rim's uneven, and it almost looks like someone used it to scrape paint off a wall. Most people wouldn't give it a second glance. But if this penny has the right hidden trait, it could be worth over $185,000. Sounds impossible? Think again. The 1936 wheat penny was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philly Mint alone struck over 309 million of them. It's everywhere, one of the most common wheat pennies ever made. But this is where things get crazy, because the 1936 also happens to be home to one of the most famous doubled die errors in U.S. coin history. We're talking about the 1936 Doubled Die Obverse, a powerful minting error where Lincoln's profile and the inscriptions on the front of the coin appeared doubled. Not just slightly, dramatically. The words, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1936 show bold, clear shadows. Even the most casual collector can spot it with the naked eye. Now here's the kicker. Even in terrible shape, Scratched, worn down, discolored, this error coin can sell for jaw-dropping amounts. One example, graded AU50 but clearly circulated and scratched, sold for $17,500. And in 2021, a heavily worn and lightly scratched 1936 Doubled Die penny, authenticated and slabbed, stunned the auction floor when it went for $185,000. Let that sink in. A coin that most people would have thrown away turned out to be worth more than a brand new Mercedes. But it's not just the doubling. Some 1936 pennies were struck off-center or with cud breaks, like massive blobs of raised metal caused by die failure. Even with severe surface damage, these dramatic errors can bring in $2,000 to $8,000 depending on visibility. And here's where it hits emotionally. The 1936 penny comes from the depths of the Great Depression. People were clinging to every cent. These coins passed through thousands of hands. Workers, farmers, mothers, soldiers. It's not just a coin. It's a survivor. And sometimes what looks like damage is just proof that it lived through history. So if you find a scratched-up 1936 wheat penny, don't toss it aside. Hold it under a light. Check that date. Look for shadows in the lettering, because even if it looks like it came out of a junkyard, it could be the jackpot you never saw coming. And with that, your journey through bad condition but unbelievably valuable wheat pennies has come to a shocking end. We've seen coins that were dirty, scratched, corroded, and forgotten, but hiding secrets worth tens, even hundreds, of thousands of dollars. If this blew your mind, hit that subscribe button for more. Because Coin Hunt Daily is just getting started, and the next coin we uncover might be your own.